Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to do a video on the Sweetheart Roadster. Been a little while since we've worked on it. I've just been kind of staring at the car, trying to figure out what my next move is. We're on to a lot of sheet metal work, and it's kind of exciting because this is some of the fun stuff to clean up the body and also get rid of a lot of this major rust in the car and just get it looking nicer. So, the one thing I've been staring at and going back and forth on is shaving the filler neck, the gas filler neck on a Model A. I surveyed a bunch of my friends on what we should do, what I should do here, whether I do a 32 cal vent or to shave it. Surprisingly, a lot of my friends were saying the cal vent option, and I think it is cool, but I think that's kind of a more modern take on this modification here. And looking at the little books and a lot of the old magazines, it seemed like pretty much everybody shaved this in the mid to late 50s. That was the common thing you would see. They would take this out, shave it, and just leave it smooth. So that's kind of the air I'm building the car to, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to knock this out with the knockout punch and make a panel, weld it up. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we got this hole cut. I sanded the area around it to see what the metal around it looked like, and it's looking pretty good. Used the knockout punch as you guys saw. Ran into one little issue when I was cutting it. I kind of forgot that underneath there's the other side of the filler neck, the flange, that was still kind of stuck up there even though I cut this out, and that was just me forgetting. So when I went to cut this, I got most of the way through, but it was hanging up, and I could feel with the impact gun that I ran out of material or room in the die, and I couldn't cut all the way. So I took it all apart and looked, and sure enough, when I went to take it apart, that bottom piece just fell down through the metal. Put it back together, blasted it back down, and it cut right through pretty darn nice. And we pulled the knockout punch out, and we have a really nice clean cut. So what I did is I used another piece that was a knockout that was in there from another piece I cut, because this was kind of rough from the old filler neck underneath. And I used that as a guide or a template. I laid that down on the metal, scribed a nice clean line, and what that did is that left me a really accurate line that I could cut with the snips to get a really close patch here. So I have our patch here. A cool little trick I like to do, and you might see me use these a lot in other videos, is these Eastwood stitch weld magnets. These are really nice for setting patches up on a panel when you're stitch welding, as it sounds. That's their main use, which is really good. They're good for that. I use it all the time. But the other thing is, because they're such a strong rare earth magnet, they're really good for tons of other uses. I use them for putting holding paper patterns on, holding patches like this, all kinds of stuff. But this is one that I like to use when you're trying to fit a patch panel that you want a perfect fit. Instead of potentially dropping it down into the car, you use this. You can hold on to it. You got a little handle, and we can test fit. So we're really close, but it looks like we have just a tiny bit more that needs to come off. So I'm going to use the belt sander, sand this down real quick, and get this thing to fit, and we'll get ready to weld it up. Alright guys, so got this section welded up and went pretty smoothly. We got the panel fitment really nice, so everything kind of blended together as we were welding really well. I had a couple little spots where I didn't clean the underside as good as I thought I did, and it popped on me, so I had to go back in and add a little more filler, which created a little more heat and created a little more warping. So this is a big thing that I talk about a lot. You can't get around the warping of the metal. It's just how science works. It's going to shrink when you put that much heat into it when you're melting metal. So we'll drop some close-ups, but I got some pretty crazy pulling here. If you've just started doing this kind of stuff, this is pretty scary. In the beginning, I showed you guys this was almost dead flat here, and it is not now. It's sunk in pretty good. It's actually a little better in the weld area. So I knocked the weld down on the underside already, so what I'm going to do is just tap around the weld here and hammer on dolly. When you hear that ringing, that's going to stretch the metal and is going to reverse this, this damage adjacent to it. So let me do some hammering here. We'll come back and show you what it looks like after just a short round of hammering. lot better. Still got some shrinking here, but we can see it's not nearly as crazy. This area up here isn't as raised as much anymore. So let me just a little more. Getting closer. Okay, so after a little bit of hammering here, got the panel a lot closer. I did a little bit of hammering after you guys saw, just switching around some of the hammers and dollies to get it to fit a little better. So I'm getting close here, and actually there it's almost flat again. Still a little low there, but we're coming in nice. Like back in here, we're pretty much touching where we need to be. And you guys will notice I have not touched a sander to the top side of this panel yet. That's a nice thing about TIG welding. We can hammer and crush the weld as we're adjusting it. So if you have a nice fit of your panel, you're going to already have an almost flush weld to begin with. So as you hammer it down, it's going to crush it, and you require almost no sanding or removal of actual material. So I'm still really close here. So out in here we still have a little bit, it's a little low. Now I don't know if this is damage out here too that was previous. I didn't check this far out, but I have just a little bit of low maybe starting here. But the thing is, it's a ripple effect. As I raise it over here, it's going to take out that tiny bit of low that's over here. So you don't need to be hammering over in this area that we didn't even touch. I usually work just the area that around where we welded, and most of the time that takes out pretty much all the damage. I did one little hit off dolly where it was a little high up in here, where it kind of bubbled up and it was sucked in here a little bit. I didn't get it on camera, but what I did is I held down with my dolly right here, and then in this valley that was really low, I tapped just real lightly, and that kind of like flip-flopped the two of these and made them more even. So now we're just working out some fine tuning. Now the other thing is we need a little bit of side to side here, like we had talked about, because the panel has a little bit of a curvature, and it's kind of in this panel, but it needs a little more help. So what I'm going to do is, just lightly to get that shape where I need it to be, I'm going to use a hammer with like a medium crown on it. Not super high, but it has a pretty decent crown, and a larger dolly here, and I'm not going to hold it as tight. And what I'm going to do is just hammer just in the center of our repair panel here, and that's going to give it a little bit of that crown that we need. That's it. Just that little bit there is all we really needed to do. That raised it up just a tiny bit, and that's pretty good. You can check with our straight edge here, and man, we're getting really close. This panel was sunk in, probably over a 1/16 of an inch, or bordering on an 1/8 of an inch. It was sucked in, and just from hammering on this edge, on this weld area, we've got it almost perfect. So I'm going to do a little more hammering here just to get it good. I'll sand this weld, and then we'll just do a little bit of planishing and hopefully be pretty much all set. Alright, so we got the panel welded in, got it finished out pretty good. I'd say it's about 90%. Just kind of the final shots that you saw. I ended up stripping all the paint off because as I was hammering and dollying around the area that was shrunk from the welding, I noticed some damage that was a little over to the left here. And I think that was actually what was causing some of the extreme shrinking that I saw, or low spots, is because there was an area over here that was also low that was pulling it. So I stripped all the paint off with the Eastwood Contour SCT. That got me a nice clean surface to work with. I bumped up these areas over here with the hammer and dolly, and got everything pretty good, but it was, had a lot of little waves and hammer marks from me bumping everything up. So I took out my vintage Cornwell Planisher. It's a cool tool that's been around for a really long time, and that one's probably, I'd say, from the 40s or 50s. And what it is it's like a planishing hammer where it goes really fast and taps on the metal, but you can use it on the vehicle. And the nice thing with those is you can turn the air pressure down really well, and you can just smooth everything out. So I sprayed some penetrating oil on the top of the panel so that it would glide really nicely. And I just worked it on low pressure, and it evened out a lot of that damage and waviness that I saw from repairing all the areas, and got it really, really close and really quick. So I love using that thing when I can. Sometimes you have to do it the old-fashioned way by hand, but in this instance, it worked really well. So it's all pretty good. I de-ate it. There's a couple little spots and dents that I noticed as I was working and making everything nicer. You're going to run into spots that you notice, and you can really end up being out working on the vehicle for days if you let it get to you. So I've already been out here all night, so I'm going to call it a night for what I had done already. It's pretty nice. It's the nicest part of the car probably, other than the frame we did. So I'm pretty excited to keep working on this car. I got to do some repairs and changes to the firewall, cowl sides, and we'll just keep working our way back and making the car nicer every part of the project and every video. So thanks guys for watching. If you like what you're watching, hopefully you learned something. Definitely share it with somebody else that might enjoy it as well. Subscribe, comment, and we do videos on the Sweetheart Roadster on Fridays and the free tea on Tuesdays. And sometimes we'll throw in some other videos if we have something else interesting going on. We'll throw them in. Thanks guys, appreciate it. See ya.